Right, welcome everybody to Open Door Encounters. This is the Men of Faith service, and today I would like to introduce my guest, Dean Smahon. He is involved with Open Door Encounters. You'll have seen him here and there doing these little bits and bobs. But today we're just going to have a little bit of a chat with Dean and get to know him a little bit better and what's going on in his life on his journey to faith. So the first question, as always, Dean, is please could you tell us all about your journey to faith and a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I've been in Askham Bryan now for about 4 years. I came from Leeds, and going back, winding the clock right back, was when I was born actually in Singapore, and my father was an Indian Muslim, and that he was a nationalist over there, and my mum, she was from Northern Ireland, and she found her way out there. Now, when I was about 7, 8, my mum, she became ill with cancer, and she passed away when I was that age. It was her last wishes that we would actually be brought back over to Northern Ireland to be brought up by her mum and dad, my granny and granddad. So my brother and I, we, after arrangements and that, we came across to Northern Ireland. So up to that, my father being a Muslim, we didn't participate in any sort of church activity or introduction to that. So up to I was about 9 years of age. But when I came over to Northern Ireland, of course, being a country as it is, it's full of religion, it's full of faith. And my grandmother and father, like, they were churchgoers, so we went there as young kids, and that was my introduction to it. And yeah, so I did the normal thing. I went to Sunday school, did RE at school, but I did believe in God, but I didn't understand the gospel. I didn't understand who the person of Jesus was, and but God was always the person that I looked at as the spiritual person, and I would have prayed. I would actually pray, and I remember praying right up till I was like even my late teens and that, but certainly didn't understand the gospel. It's interesting that, why you don't actually get it. Some people do get it, and some people don't. For me, I didn't it didn't resonate with me, it didn't stick on me, and even my adult life, I didn't know the gospel the way I would know it today. So yeah, that was my real introduction to faith. So I was grounded from about 8 or 9 through teaching school, Sunday school, the usual thing. Confirmed later age, a teenager, but it was very mechanical. It was very much part of the family. That's what you did. So that's how my introduction of faith came into my life.
Mm-hmm. Right, great. So I met you at the beginning of lockdown on a screen like this during the Open Door Encounter meetings, and I only sort of got to know you face to face a few weeks ago when it became apparent to me and everybody else in the room that you're a double leg amputee. You had your artificial leg blades on, and I work in that field, so it was quite interesting to me to see that. So it'd be really interesting for everybody to hear the story behind your legs and what happened there, and how that interlinks with your relationship with God and how that's kind of evolved over time.
Yeah, that was massive. I have to say, going back to that night when you saw my condition, it was a breath of fresh air. The person actually come up to me, oh wow, false legs, wow, great. For me that's great because nobody ever does that. They either like look at you or look away, don't know what, they're a bit tentative, a bit shy what they say, they won't offend, So that was a bit of breath of fresh air, actually. So yeah, that was a funny moment for me, but I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, so basically in 2010, I contracted sepsis, and I went to the hospital, and they didn't know that I actually had it, and I went into septic shock. So I was actually fighting for my life on the ward. They didn't pick up on it, and they put me into ICU and put me into induced coma, in which I was I think about 10, 11 days in an induced coma. So by that stage, there's this golden hour where if they can get at you, pump you with the right drugs, a strain of penicillin, whatever it is, you know, there's a chance that you make a full recovery. Within, they call it a golden hour. Unfortunately, I missed that. And I was in ICU fighting for my life. And my wife of now, Kirsty, we'd only known each other at that stage for, what was it, like 6 or 7 weeks. That's all we knew each other. That's also a bit of a awakening for her. And so I was in this coma and really fighting for my life. Now, at that stage, I wasn't living the life of a Christian. I wasn't following, you know, I moved away from the faith. I had left home when I was 16, joined the police in Northern Ireland, did a full service over there, came over here, retired, and I actually became involved in the music industry over in Leeds. I became a DJ, and I was DJing for quite a long time, and that's another story which I'll go back to. So it was interesting because when I was in my coma, they said I had less than 10% chance of living because all my vital organs had closed down. They had maxed me out on all the medication. They could not physically give me any more medication for me to be supported. And it was just on what my body was able to do. So Kirsty was a Christian at that stage, and she St George's Hospital, St George Hospital, sorry, the LGI, opposite LGI's, St George's Church, and there was a pastor there, a vicar there, and Kirsty used to go there, and she brought him across. So he was praying for me. There was people praying for me all over. I only learned this afterwards because at this stage I was literally dying. They said if I did live, that it would be very reduced. Like, you know, my kidneys would be a fail because I was so badly done. So yeah, I was very lucky. I was very lucky that I survived that. And you know, Kirsty, she was doing the bedside vigil and she was praying, and the vicar was around, and it was church praying for me. You've got to bear in mind, I wasn't following faith then. I'd gone away from it, as I was saying. But the interesting thing about it was that I came out of the coma, and they were really surprised how much I came out. They said that when I came out, they were like really, because when I came out of it, I literally came off all my meds. And you know, it's one of those mysteries, like, you know, what actually happened. But they said that they actually never seen anything like it. And of course, I wasn't aware of what was going on. You know, I was just a case of nod, and that's where I was. And a really interesting thing, because further down the line, that's when it was really difficult for me, because I then didn't realize, but I was going to lose my legs below the knee. I was going to use my right hand and digits in my left hand, because you're drugged up so much, you know, in your recovery phase. And I remember, so basically what happened, when they were going to amputate my legs, they couldn't administer me any epidural, or not an epidural, what do you call it in the spine?
An epidural in the spine.
Epidural, yeah, epidural in the spine, and they couldn't do it because of the sepsis in case it got into the spine.
Yeah.
So they had to manage it through local anesthetic and painkillers when I came out. The pain was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It was.
Yeah, it was. It really was. I remember sitting in ICU and I was looking at the clock. I've got this thing about time. I've really always had it from a young kid. I've always liked to know what time it is. And I was in ICU. There was no one there, and I was sitting. I was in awful pain. It would like took them about 3 days to administer my pain, up and down, different drugs to try and get me down. And so looking back, I didn't know, but I felt a real encounter at that stage, which was weird, really, really weird for me. And all I could say was that it was like somebody's hand on the top of my head, really in the top of my head, just feeling because I was fully up. I was sitting up in bed in 45 degree, looking at the clock. I remember it was 1:05 in the morning, and the pain was excruciating. And I felt this hand. This hand it brought me a lot of peace. Like, this is really like, it's quite out there, you could say. But this is what happened, you know. I share this with so many people. And it was literally a hand. It wasn't just like something pressing on me. And then what I felt over probably a short space of time, I felt this radiating going down through my body from there. And at any given time, I could tell you where it was, how far it was. And it was going down, and everything above was peace. And I could feel all this pain down here. And eventually came down. Now, I didn't realize what that was going on there, because it was really weird, you know, and but I believe there was a presence of God there, because too many things have happened in my life since that I look back, that I can relate to, and I think to myself, I just didn't recognize the language of God. I didn't recognize him. I didn't know who the person of Jesus was. And that was just one encounter that I remember. That was very close. So that was a profound moment at the time. I didn't know anything so much about. I believed in God. Of course, I believed in God, but I didn't know about Jesus. And when my friends came up, and I had friends because I was DJing around Leeds, friends from all, you know, Muslims, there was like all religions and backgrounds and stuff, but it was in the clubbing world, and they would come and see me. I was telling these guys, big beefy guys, and when I remember telling this story, I could feel the tears coming down my eyes. There was I wasn't still not in that place where I was like really, oh my goodness, I've lost my legs and stuff like that. It was about this story because it was resonating something. I still didn't know quite what, but I believed at that stage, even though I didn't know gospel, that God was in the mix there. I really did. You know, it was very, very profound. And you know, even when I'm talking to you now here about it, I can feel the shivers. You know, there's the hairs and spine in the back of my neck crawling up there, because it's real. It's, you know, it's like it happened on yesterday. So that was like something that happened. So my biggest spell was when I came out of hospital. I was in hospital for 3 months, and that was a really hard spell. When I came out, I was struggling. You know, I had I went into anxiety, depression. I lost my identity. I did a lot of sport. I was this DJ around Leeds and stuff. So my presence was just lost. I was wiped out, no hands. I met a girl, 7 weeks. I'm like, what is she going to think of me and stuff? Insecurities, jealousy, all the worst things that any man would just not dream about or even admit that they could even suffer from that. I was wiped out, totally wiped out. I was down on the ground. And I think that was when I realized that my own strength can do it, because I was very independent. I lost my mum when I was very young. That made me grow up. I always looked at myself to get on in the world. How do I move away from this? You know, I had a profound sort of like loss and separation and a kind of abandonment when I lost my mum. That affected me, you know, really, really badly. So to meet God in different occasions in my life was quite a turning point for me. And I know that it was through me being flat out, down and out, nowhere to go. I couldn't, you know, I had nowhere to go. I didn't have any gas left in the tank. I couldn't rely on myself. You know, there was times I thought, well, this world would be a better place without me. I really did, you know. I thought, I just can't go on.
Understandable.
And but things started to change, and I went on an alpha course to sort of like find out about it. Kirsty, really, my wife, she, you know, being a Christian, she was a born again Christian as well. She had trials in her life, and she was born again. And you know, we kind of struggled and really found our way through it. But I slowly but surely tried to find faith. And my journey was a very slow journey, because I'm a stubborn old mule. That's why, because that's me. That is my, nobody can turn around. Yeah, I mean, it's true. I'll throw my hands up that one. Nobody can turn around and tell me you have to do this. This is the way to do it. I will always. I like listening to people. I like listening to people who are learned, who are educated, who's got wisdom. Because I lost my mum and dad, so I always love to hear people who's got something to share. Something, I love all that. But I will always make my own decision through my findings, and that's what I will do. So I went on this journey. Right, what's going on here? You know, this God thing and all. You know, what's in it? So found myself doing a degree in theology. Went and got an opportunity to work in a ward in the LGI as a volunteer chaplain. So I went back onto the ward, the plastics ward where I was, and I was able to sort of, I guess, minister or whatever way you want to call it, to people that were in the bed that I was in. And it was such a unique, privileged position to be in. Yeah. Because at this stage, my faith was coming in. I believed. There was a tipping point. I found out who Jesus was. I really got to the bottom of that. And once I believed, that was it. I believed. And that got rid of all the veils. That got rid. Not so much I was against it, but it was more so that it was because I didn't know. I really didn't know. Nobody really explained it to me as a person. I think we can go out and say, Jesus is this person, he's Son of God, he came to save your sins, he died for you and all, but what does that mean to the person whose level of understanding is different from the next person? I think we have to look at people individually, and if we're lucky that we can do a broad blanket sweep and it just hits so many people, I think that's a unique and great position, but it's not like that, because I know that for all those years, it didn't hit me. I believe in God, but it didn't hit me. And it took me to get through that experience, to do a bit of a journey to search. But once I did find it, it was no return. Yeah. So that was my kind of like introduction to God and how it all came about. I think I believed in something. I think a lot of people believe in something, whereas spiritually, or was, you know, they believe in a bigger entity, a spirit, whatever, you know. It's just letting people know, yeah, I'll tell you what you believe, because there's something in your heart that's made to accept that God is the person who made you to love you. And I think for me, that was the awakening. And once I found that, but it touched every button that you could ever think that I needed switched on. You know, lost my mum, who's going to love me like a mother? Lost my dad, who's going to give me the wisdom? My identity, my you know, my purpose, everything. It just came. I didn't search for it. Yeah. It doesn't, for me, it didn't happen overnight. It's a long journey, and I'm still so much further, way to where I believe I could be. I don't even profess that I'll ever find it all, but there's never a long period of time which I don't have a profound awakening of, oh my goodness, that's something else new. You know, that's so exciting. You know, that's what God does for me. I've lost my legs. You know, there's my hands. Here I am. Look at that there. I haven't got much left. You know, you look at me and you think, like, you know, I've got an attractive wife. We would go down the street, something like that. You remember going down the street, and I used to be in the wheelchair, and I used to think, I'm so insecure in my identity. I've got no hands or legs, and that's a good-looking girl. And I used to like really just, my shoulders used to go in. I used to like feel so terrible about myself. And oh my goodness, you know, people looking at me, pitying me and stuff like this here. But now, I'm just like, yeah, I've got no legs, I've got no hands, but you know what? I've got God in my life, and it's just, that's where you see the life in me. That's where you see the future in me, my excitement. So yeah, so basically that's how it all came about God. I was profound enlightenment through my own personal loss, actually. Yeah, through my own personal loss.
So when I thought of that question, I thought you'd talk about being angry and cross and why me and why not somebody else, and how come bad things happen to good people and all the other things, but you haven't mentioned any of that. It's been enlightenment and joy and a journey and teaching, and that's so, I'm sure you did get angry at some points, but it sounds like you were angry with yourself rather than God. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a Bible verse in Romans 8, I think it says, like, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Now, if we hold on to that as a truth, to me, God's word is a truth. It's a promise. It's not like when I talk to my mates, I could tell them a wee lie here, a wee fib, I could stretch the truth. My understanding of it, and it's unrebuttable, it's concrete, is that when I read the scripture of what, you know, especially in the Bible, for people who don't know the Bible, when it comes up in red in some Bibles, this is Jesus speaking, I think to myself, well, I ain't gonna, you know, I could maybe think, well, the Apostle Paul might be off the mark here about this, that, the other, about some theology, you know. But when Jesus is saying something like that, especially, I mean, well, you know, if that's what it's saying, the promises, you know, and all good things can happen for his good, he can use it. Well, who am I to argue with that? I have felt the most important thing, and this is the most important, and I think if I stick to that passage, for all things that are good can be used. So if you look at that, all my loss from a young kid, my mother's relationship and I was on point. You know, we had such a lovely, beautiful relationship. So I had further to fall. I had further of a loss, and it was, you know, it really was bad, because obviously 8, 7, 8 year old, you get to know about bits and bobs of that. So I think that encounter made me feel that loss, made me feel unloved, made me feel abandoned. It wasn't my fault, but that's the effects it had on me personally as a child. I grew up with that. That affects your life. That affects that sort of, that's how your formation of your life is based on those situations, those encounters, you know, those experiences in life. But yet I went through all of that, and because I come out through the other side, I see what Jesus can do. I see what he can really do in a real, not a make, not in somebody telling me, because don't forget I said I need to know. Nobody's turned around and we can do things. I went through the journey, but I'm not sure I understand. How do I do that? How do I do that? I do that because I realize how much actually God loves me as a person. He's never meant any of this to happen to me. No. This is why, this is the fall, isn't it? This is what, God never made us to suffer like this. God never wanted us to be separated from his love. But when we turn around and look at him and realize that he loves us in a way that is way beyond our understanding, way beyond that, then that is where a platform you can work through everything. Because I struggled so much. I had in my head about God, and I could go to alpha courses about Jesus and stuff. I started to believe it, you know, archaeological truth, the biblical truth, historical truth. All the evidence was there, but yet I didn't feel it. I couldn't feel it in my heart, because I was broken. I was broken. I lost my mom. That separation. But he was the only one that healed me. He was the one that came into my life, and he only came into my life because I allowed him in. That was it. Yeah. He never forced himself on me. Well, me being myself, I would have said, nah, not yet, because that's me. But he came into my life because I allowed him, and he gently pursued me. He gently was there walking with me. And it was all through all those bad times. It was all through those dark places, and that I was isolated and crying, scared, and like you're right, you know, insecurities and stuff. It's such an amazing thing, you know, when you experience God's love. I mean, really experience, because I think we all know up here in our heads, but how do you explain somebody that is counter-cultural to the world that we live in? You know, do you realize that that guy up there loves you? You know, do you realize that? Because they're carrying shame, they're carrying pain, they're carrying insecurities. That was me. That was me. You know, I was like down in the gutter. I wasn't worthy enough. I wasn't shameful about how I looked, shameful about where I was going to be. Couldn't support this girlfriend. All those things, shame, carrying all those things. But yet, no, to hell with that. I'm done with that, because you've shown me a way out here. I couldn't do it on my own strength. I couldn't have done it. And that's the difference. You know, that is the difference. And by learning that, it's just like, it's like, I've got my hand in the cookie jar. I want to tell my mates all about it. Look at this big cookie. I've got, guys, come and get this. That's what it's about for me. You know, the guys thought, I get excited telling them about God's love. You know, and truthfully, that's it. It's just about his love. And then the conversation starts about that.
Yes, that's brilliant. So you've got a little girl, you've got a lovely wife, Kirsty, and a little girl called Kate, and you've got a baby imminently on the way. So where does your faith interact with your family life, and how has it influenced you during the roller coaster of starting a new family?
Yeah, you know, it's funny that, but one of the things that I've realized is that it's not in our time, but it's in God's time. Mm-hmm. I have no doubt that God placed Kirsty and I together because she had a lot of struggles in her life, and she found faith. She found me. I didn't even have a faith, and we came together, and our faith, we grew together. I would say, you know, we've got a strong faith. We pray together. We pursue it. You know, we really pursue it. We seek God's kingdom. We work together. So because we live that out, Kate is brought into the world, our daughter, into that world, and she will hear it's like having background music on, like gospel songs and stuff, and we dance about in a room, or you know. And what we do is like simple things. Is like every mealtime we get a candle, and if it's lunch or tea time, we light the candle, and I say, right, Kate, tell me when to light it, because she's too young, the flame and everything. So I light it, and she says, right. So we sit down. So what are we going to say, Kate? And she does it. She says, thank you, God, for this wonderful food. Amen. You know, and it's a simple faith, but we don't tell her you've got to do it. What do you want to say? You know, and that has developed. That is developed, and all we do is we nurture that, because we believe that God's got his hands there. I honestly believe that. I'm going to quickly deviate here. When Kate was being baptized at the church, because we went through IVF, so that was a long journey, a really long journey, 5 years before Kate came along. Yeah, lots of losses and stuff like that. We were living in Leeds, and I was really trying. And so we had faith in our last church, and I remember one of the times Kirsty lost, and it was pretty hard. And you know, you got the whole church praying for you. You're going through this journey together, and then you think, oh goodness, this is not happening and stuff. And yeah, of course you can doubt God. For me, I didn't, because God really showed up with me.
Yeah.
You know, he really truthfully showed up with me in a very personal way. So I could hold on to those promises. I could hold on through those experiences. He's never let me down. He's always steered me in the right direction. Still early Christian, born again still, but you know, I knew that he was truthful of his word. I had this real profound word from him that, look, Dean, just trust me. You're going to have a child, and not only that, but your child is going to be special in my kingdom, right? And words of that effect, as close as I can do that. And I've told Geoff Mumford about this as well. But I spoke to my vicar about this, you know, and we discussed it, and I like, you know, so we were going through this journey. So just trust me, we're going to have this, you know. I think it might have been maybe 2 years later, a year and a half, 2 years later, Kate came along. When Geoff was baptizing Kate, I've got these photographs, and the two sets of people sent photographs after the baptism, and basically, so independent cameras, independent people didn't know each other, and there was like click, 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 and then click, and on the fourth one was just as Geoff was putting the water on Kate, there was a profound line came down, and right to the line was light. Right down the middle. I've got the photograph here. I can show you. You know, something unbelievable. And then when Geoff was giving the blessing, there was Kirsty and me, and we were holding Kate and Geoff. And just as he went like that, there was a profound line went across like this. Everything above it was light, and it was darker down below. Now these are two different cameras, two sets of people didn't even know. They didn't even know about this. They just sent us photographs. We looked at it and said, what's going on here? You know, so that's it. And Geoff said on the day, when he was talking, and gave a bit of a sermon, he said, it's not too often I say this, but I feel that Kate's going to be special in God's kingdom. For me, but one of my prosthetic legs nearly fell off when I was standing there. That, you know, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Because it was just like, wow, this is like, you know,
that's amazing.
This is God showing up here, God's showing up, you know, the Holy Spirit's here. So going back about Kate, I believe that what has God called me to do? I think He can use my situation to spread the word, tell people about His love. But I think it just could be that we don't know. Is it because nurture Kate, give her the opportunity, know God, because what would she do with it? Who will she be? Who will she reach?
Who knows?
Yeah. So that's the way we think. It's about nurturing her. And you know what? That could be it. That could be Kirsty's calling. That, you know, that could be it, because I'm on a path. I'm doing a reader, and I'm hoping to get out there and you know, hopefully build God's kingdom actively through the church. But she has said she feels that God has asked her just to do this, and we talked about this. So this is going back to your question. I think this is where we find ourselves important, that Kate is nurtured in that way and given the opportunity to have just to know who the person of God is, and she will make up her mind as she gets older. Yeah,
that's brilliant. It's very inspiring. So you've said that you're very involved in the church, and that's where you want to be and plan to be. You're very involved at Askham Bryan. You've been very involved in the Open Door Encounter services. As a man of faith, what does being an active member of your church mean to you? And where do you see family worship now and kind of in the future, the bright future that we all have after COVID?
I think the church, as we all know, is, you know, like in every sector in life, it's going through a big change, you know, with COVID. But I think sometimes big change can bring a lot of new things. And if you know, I just look at the Bible and I think, you know, for the people who know the Bible, when Jerusalem fell and the walls fell and they were taken into exile, and you know, that was it. The Jews thought that's it, but they, you know, they came back stronger eventually after so many years of exile. And God does that, you know, God does that. We look at the floods, and you know, I'm not saying at all, I'm not advocating God has caused any of this. I don't believe He does, but I think He uses, going back to that Romans verse, He can make all things good for His kingdom. And we are given that free choice. So we are the ones that direct where possibly the church goes. So, you know, we've got a lot on our shoulders. We've got a lot of responsibility and a gift. You know, it's a privilege to be in such a position, to be involved, that you can shape and be guided by the Spirit to say, this is what I want you to do. And all we have to do is just follow that through. We've got to listen. I think we've got to really believe what it is. I think that the church has got to be going through a new phase. You know, it has. You know, as Christians, we don't go to church to become Christians. No. We go to church because we are Christians. What about the people that aren't Christians, that don't know about God? You know, we're not meant to be comfortable in our seats. You know, we are supposed to go out there and share it. You know, we can rock up to the church every day and just sit there and be fed, you know, be fed. But, you know, you're going to get fed. And from what you're going to be a bit of a, you know, going to have that gastric band, for goodness sake. If you're going to be fed that much, you don't do something about it. This is where I think it's our responsibility, because it's the commission, isn't it? It's what God says. I think we need to realize that we have to push the boat out. We have to do things that maybe might break tradition, might cause a little bit of stir, make things uncomfortable. But it's important, most important, we bring people along. nobody within a church that is established should be feeling threatened, that they should be nurtured in saying that we have to bring the people that who do not know God, we have to give them the opportunity. And that's the challenge. I think that is the challenge, because it's the future. The kids are the future. They really are. If we can't reach them, I think it's great. I mean, we know that you guys are doing a great job, Messy Church, you know, I mean, great result, awesome result. So we should be looking right. How are we going to sustain that? How do we put that next stage, next stage up? It's just like school there, and like in any company, you're going to move up the ladder. You're going to, so you've got a purpose. You've got to be able to keep moving in that direction, and that's a challenge. I think we are facing a time where we can really do something good with what's happening, rather than thinking it's doom and gloom. Because we've got the gospel, for goodness sake. We've got God's promises. That's it. You can't argue with that. We can't sit back and say, oh well, it's all doom and gloom. It's like, where's the church going to go now? It's not. We're sitting on God's promises. That's it. You can't ignore that. We've got to be reminded of that, I think, and that's so important. So I believe the church has an opportunity to really look at itself, fumble, try, make mistakes, do it. But sometimes unless we're prepared to take those risks, then we'll never know where we could have been. We'll never know if we're doing the right thing. I think it's very important to keep nurturing the people that we've got. We just want to get more people to get to know God. And however we do that, we've got to be adventurous in that. And I think, that's really important. There's a verse in Colossians, which I hold really close. It's one of my favorite verses. And I think it says, like, my goal is that they may be encouraged in heart and united in love, so that they may have the full riches of the complete understanding, in order that they may know the mystery of God, namely Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. I think myself, think about that passage. That's my goal, to be encouraged in heart and united in love, so that they may know the full riches. And that is what is so beautiful and great opportunity that God's asking each and every one of us. And we have to do that, because it's not the people, it's not just Geoff, it's not just like the bishop or the archbishop, it's each and every one of us. When I look at the Zoom meetings on a Sunday, and I think, what a room full of wisdom of all these people, mature in their faith. What could they be doing? How could we nurture them? How could we encourage them to say, you've got a purpose. You've got a big purpose still. Never think that you just come to church and that you're settled and you're good. You're sitting on a wealth of spiritual knowledge and wisdom that can be shared. If you hit one person, that one person in 100 years, you don't know how that could profoundly affect in a pyramid. You just don't know. One person in God's kingdom, I believe, I think it's true. They will be celebrating if one person gets to know by God.
That's brilliant. That's great. You make a good point that we all need to step up sometimes and be there and do our duty. And that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Dean. It's been lovely having a chat with you and getting to know you a little bit more and more about your faith. So pass it back over to them on Open Door Encounters.
And before we go, I'll finish on this one. I thought to myself, how would I like to finish? Because you want to make it profound. I think it's very important, as I sit here, this is not about me. This is about God. This is all about pointing towards God. This is about what God does. This is how God's kingdom can shape, conform you, and you can be part of. So this recording, once it goes live, imagine if everybody in the room watching this, once this goes up on YouTube, just copy that link and send it out to one person that they know. It's not about, oh, this is what we're doing in our church. It's about what God's doing. Just think, So if we're all called to be part of the mission, so just by doing that, you don't have to be on the street. You don't have to be going out and ringing somebody. Just say, I came across this, have a listen. And that is mission. That's evangelism. And you're doing God's work.